So we come to the next session already. This is the vegetable breeding update. And here, to make the start, I would like to talk about our current works and about our breeding pipelines. If I may, before we go to the breeding pipelines, if I just may have a minute of your time to show you how we perceive our work. And our work now could be described by the 3 Ps. One P is push, the other one is pull, the other one is policy and governance. Of course, most of our work in this breeding consortium is on the push side. That means to expand the availability and affordability of healthy food. That means to provide vegetable lines, breeding materials, and production systems. But we should not underestimate the necessity of the pull effect. And all of you will understand that because you have marketing departments in your companies. Pull means to work on the demand side, to generate demand, to improve demand for healthy foods and for our breeding materials, and to make diets more healthy. And the 3rd P is policy and governance. These are to influence as far as possible policies to make vegetable more equally accessible for everybody. So this was briefly how I would perceive our work at the moment. Then some of you might ask yourself, if you have seen our center about 2 years ago at the last field day here in Shanghai, what are we doing with our phenotyping system? We are now celebrating the 2nd anniversary to have our high throughput phenotyping system. And I'm happy to say that we have worked on 3 crops, pepper, amaranth, and okra. And we have accomplished 3 experiments on pepper, 3 experiments on amaranth, and 2 on okra. And the pepper heat stress project that we are discussing today near the end of this workshop is one of the products of this high throughput screening that has been performed on a large pepper core collection. Now to the breeding pipelines and to the APSA-WorldVeg Consortium workshop. Well, like every year, we are holding this workshop. Unfortunately, already the 2nd time virtually. Next time it will be in person, I'm convinced. We also have a field day. We plan a field day in person in early 2022. Inshallah, this will take place in Bangalore in India in May 2022. Please do not forget to request your breeding lines. You have early access to 10 breeding lines. And please check out whether the special projects that we are offering, like every year, are of interest for you. We have this discussion point a little bit later. And then I would like to thank you, like the speakers before, for discussing with us the demand for new traits, for new and new ideas, and also to provide us with a very important information. This is the information about your seed sales that contain material from us. This is very important for us to learn. Last but not least, also to demonstrate that our work has impact that helps us to justify our work with our donors. I mentioned already these special projects. When we look at this chart where I depict the development of new breeding materials as starting with exploiting crop biodiversity and then discovering traits and then introgressing these traits into breeding materials, these are the preparative steps before our special projects come in. And these special projects I'm talking about, I would like to partition them into 2 kinds. One kind is rather focusing on research, and the other one is rather focusing on product development. When we look at special projects on research, They are generally validating traits, or they include multi-location trials of material developed by WorldVeg with your help, or to develop breeding tools. Whereas product development aims at the production and dissemination of breeding lines for hybrid parrots. When we look at the ongoing special projects, those on research, these are those that were offered for you to subscription now on heat stress tolerance of tomato and pepper and begomovirus resistance on pepper. These are those projects that go in the direction rather of research. And then those that have to do with product development are on bitter gourd and on pumpkin. Beside these active research and project development projects that I just mentioned, we propose this year 2 new projects. One is on insect resistance of tomato, and I'm expecting very interesting discussions about this project that will be proposed by Peter Hansen. And then a little bit later, we are going to propose the phase 4 of our bitter gourd consortium project. And then for the very near future, we plan to launch a project, a research project on pepper anthracnose resistance. And Narinda Dillon will briefly talk about the plant projects on loofah and okra, which again will be rather on the product development side. I see this slide might be a little bit too small for your screen. I hope you can read something, but it depicts our trait species matrix that shows which traits are interesting probably for you, but are also most interesting for us, and which traits we would like to work on the different crops. And in order to make this a little bit more visible, I come in with these kind of small labels and would like to just point out some research priorities that we have for the next years. And these research priorities, if there is interest from your side, could be converted into special projects where we do research together. One would be on leaf diseases of tomato, a research direction that has been quite neglected during the last years, and leaf diseases are more and more prevalent. Climate change might influence that also, and this could be an interesting project for the future. I know that seed companies mostly are interested rather in disease resistances, but I think that nutritional traits are more and more important for the companies, but also for us, of course, because we are working on healthy diets. Virus resistance is of permanent interest. New viruses are coming up, new problems are coming up, new solutions have to be found. So virus resistance will remain in our product portfolio, and also in future we will launch projects on developing virus resistant breeding lines. One issue that is coming up more and more, especially in the tropics in connection with climate change, is flooding tolerance. I did not yet hear from seed companies that this is a trait that would be interesting for them for their crops, but we are working on flood tolerance on certain crops in collaboration with the public sector. And I would like to start the discussion to see in how far this trait could be of interest also for commercial seed companies. And there is another topic like biostimulants that is of interest for my colleagues from the flagship Safe and Sustainable Value Chains. This is a research direction that is not directly of interest for seed companies, but I just wanted to bring it up here because this might be a research that we are going into in the next years. In parallel, we are preparing the technical basis for CRISPR. This system is used in our center for research, and we are in two networks on CRISPR, one international one and one national one, where we are discussing the technical and the legal aspects of these works. And we are ready to take up also collaborations using this method. And last but not least, I would like to mention access to new genetic resources as one of the research directions. Last year, we have offered a project on working on new genetic resources of pumpkins. We did not find many companies that were interested in that. But on the other hand, in the scope of some of our special projects that we are launching now, the access to new genetic resources, in particular the pepper core collection, is part of the project. And I think that participating companies will benefit from the biodiversity of this germplasm, not only for the trait the special project is looking for, but also for other traits that are of importance in breeding. And I would like to keep this task in mind. And to conclude, I would like to show you or share with you a few thoughts about climate change and horticulture and climate change. This is not of direct interest for our breeding consortium at the moment, but it well might become of interest. Because vegetable crops are particularly sensitive to climate change. Generally, they have high water demand and they have very strict temperature requirements. But unlike field crops, it's much more difficult to determine the effect of climate change on horticulture, because there are so many species involved, and the different species respond differentially to climate stress. And horticulture generally is practiced on small surfaces, which makes modeling of effects more difficult than if we would model the effect of climate change on maize or on soybean, for example. And there are two directions I think we need to work on. Of course, there is climate change adaptation to make our crops more resilient, and also to diversify our crop portfolio in order to be able to respond to climate change challenges. But then there is also climate change mitigation. The climate change mitigation will most likely less involve the development of new improved varieties, but it will rather involve the optimization of production technologies, more circular and climate neutral economy for horticulture, and to reduce soil degradation and to stock more carbon in the soil, or to make more efficient use of inputs, and to reduce waste. Overall, I think, like any other industry, horticulture needs to become climate neutral in order to cope with the future challenges. Although the contribution of horticulture to climate change is much less than agriculture in general, but nevertheless, we cannot neglect that this industry should also turn into something that is climate neutral. With this, I would like to conclude this presentation, and I see that there are already two questions that came in. I am asked, what is the status of pepper leaf curl virus resistant lines? This is again a question for Derek. He will address this in his presentation. Or now, Derek, you want to answer? Derek will address this in his presentation. I would just say that we have a special project on this topic, and we have a few lines where we think that they carry a strong resistance against this disease. And in okra, what are the traits of focus for high throughput phenotyping? The focus trait is flooding. We have screened our core collection for variation for flooding tolerance, and we have identified candidate material. And this year we have the third trial during summer, and we hope that in this third trial we can validate the resistance of this germplasm and use this material then in breeding. I was a little bit longer than planned for my presentation and have exhausted my time. There are no more questions. So I would like to call Dr. Peter Hansen to give us an update on the WorldVeg tomato breeding and the progress on insect-resistant lines.